Okay, so good afternoon in Spain, good evening in India, and welcome everyone. It is a great pleasure for me to chair this session and this book presentation of El día que fuimos a coger fresas en Scarborough, the day we went strawberry picking in Scarborough by Ranu Uniyal, translated by Carmen Escobedo de Tapia, and published by Ediciones Camelot in Asturias in Spain. Well, Carmen hardly needs any introduction, as most of you know. She's senior lecturer in English at the University of Oviedo, where she teaches post-colonial literatures in English. And she's precisely a well-known and prestigious scholar and expert in Indian literature and culture. For her part, Ranu Uniyal is professor of English at Lucknow University in India. She's currently the head of the Department of English and Modern European Languages there. She received her Master in Philosophy from Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. She was awarded a Commonwealth Scholarship for her PhD in English from Hull University in the UK. Her main research interests are in Indian literature, women's writing, post-colonial literature, and disability studies. Her research papers and book reviews have been published extensively in India and abroad. She's the author of several academic books: Women and Landscape, the fiction of Margaret Drabble and Anita Desai in 2000, Raja Rao's Kantapura, a critical study, co-edited in New Delhi, 2007, Women in Indian Writing, From Difference to Diversity, 2009. And she has also written poetry books like December Poems, Across the Divide, and The Day We Went Strawberry Picking in Scarborough, 2018. Her poetry has appeared in many journals and books: Cha, an Asian Literary Journal, Asia Literary Review in Hong Kong, Mascara Literary Review in Australia, Jaggery, Medulla Review, Sketchbook 2020, Whispers in the US, Littlewood Press in the UK, Bengal Lights in Bangladesh, Muse India, Kavya Bharati, Emina, Manushi, Indian Literature, Spark, The Dolly Review, Dialogue, Journal of Punjab University, Jaunpur Studies in English, The Enchanting Verses Literary Review, Ethos Literary Journal, Madras Courier, and also in several anthologies, such as The Dance of the Peacock, Building Bridges, Poems from Australia and India, Suvarnareka, an anthology of Indian women poets in English, and her poems have been translated into Hindi, Malayalam, Oriya, Urdu, Spanish, and Uzbek languages. She's currently working on a book of poems in Hindi, and she's also one of the founding members of ISUM, a charitable organization for children with special needs in Lucknow. Welcome, Ranu. Welcome, Carmen. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much, Antonio.
Thank you, Antonio.
Well, by way of introduction and as the author of the prologue of this beautiful volume, I would like to very briefly emphasize that Ranu is a brilliant representative of the fruitful tradition of female poetry writing in India, a plethora of great writers who, among other relevant issues, have portrayed the divide between the colonial past and the present-day global local context in India, a tradition also facing the dilemma of writing in English and or other vernacular languages, which in recent times has acquired an increasing international reputation through relevant voices like those of Rupi Kaur or Meena Kandasamy, to give just two examples. Ranu Uniyal is a very original and powerful poet, as she shows in The Day We Went Strawberry Picking in Scarborough. Using versatile free verse and poetic prose as the technical basis of her poems, she displays a wide range of emotional and thematic nuances. In love with words, she is haunted by the magic and the potential of poetic language in itself. her poetry abounding in surprising metalinguistic wordplay. Her poetic voice is mostly confessional, and she explores some transcendental topics with surprising effects, like disappointment in love, the everydayness of love, and showing the ultimate complexity of love experience, and the thornful gap between reality and desire. She communicates the feelings conveyed by the intimate and blissful union with the elements of nature and transmits the importance of the motherly figure and most of all, female experience in a complex world. She also deals with violence against women and language, corroborating the close link provided by sorority and female solidarity. Ranu's poetry also proves to be profoundly spiritual. So, Carmen, I know this is your first experience as a translator. Can you tell us something about the process of translating Ranu's poetry book? How did everything begin? What was the process of translating Ranu's poetry like?
Yes, of course. And that's what I'm going to tell and share with you today, what actually meant translating Ranu's poems to me. I would like, however, thanking you, Antonio, for kindly writing the prologue to the translated volume. You are a poet yourself, so it's an honor to have there a prologue by you. I would like to thank also the organizers of the conference of our association for giving me the opportunity to present here the translation, which actually came out a year ago, almost, or a year ago. And it was, I didn't want to present it, I didn't accept presentation or accept it to present it online because I desperately wanted to present it to handle a live presentation, which finally took place back in September. But well, today is online, so a bit of everything. I met Ranu, I will tell you how everything originated, and it all started when Ranu and I met at the 50th birthday celebration of a shared friend, Julia Salmerón, whom I deeply thank for having given me the opportunity for this fruitful encounter. During that celebration, which took place in Madrid, a poetry reading was organized and several of Julia's friends read some of their poems, Ranu among them. Ranu had flown all the way from India with her family to join that celebration with other friends that had met before at Hull University years before. In fact, one of the poems in the book belongs to that period, and it also gives the title to the volume. Let me share with you the cover. I don't know if you can see it, the cover of the original version, which I think is very symbolic because you have the blurred strawberry at the front and a whole field of strawberries behind, which actually I think represent the volume and the poems themselves. I know Ranu might tell us about this later. That day, while I was listening to Ranu reciting some of her poems, I could feel her profoundly humane poetic voice, as well as the diversity of themes that it displayed. Of course, immediately after, I got the volumes she had brought to share with us. And well, I had been seriously considering engaging myself with the experience of literary translation, which I think is a linguistic exercise with an important creative component, even though this can be discussed, right? But I firmly believe that it entails a profound creative component, and I will explain why. Since that day, almost 3 years now, Ranu, 3 years, and after reading the whole volume, I felt very much identified with the feelings inspired by Ranu's poetic voice. Her poems transported me to moments almost lived, or at least perceived, during my stays in India. That on the one hand. On the other hand, I could feel that the poetry had a profound universal component. It also gathered many of the things I teach in my classes of post-colonial literature in English. In fact, her message transmits, no doubt, the belief in an essential human being who is the same wherever we go. And this, in my opinion, adds even more value to Ranu's poetry. In fact, this translation is a product of the pandemic we are still undergoing. It originated out of tragedy as a hopeful exercise. During those months of confinement, I made Ranu's poetry my guide for survival. I got immersed in her poetic world in an absolutely therapeutic way. Day after day, I would dive into the essence and the diverse content of her poetic expression. Every day, 1 or 2 poems, analyzed from their linguistic perspective, traveling through words and themes that made me approach and understand Ranu's inner and humane corners and concerns. The experience of translation to me constitutes an authentic discovery of alien worlds that become your own in the process. Translating is actually a building exercise with language, but it also endeavors a contextual transference of significance that underlie the meaning of words. In the case of poetry, it also requires diving into the world of feelings and emotions that the original words convey and that the author wants to express. In these 70 poems that Ranu Uniyal includes in this volume, the reader can feel being transferred or transformed, as Tishani Doshis mentioned this morning, to emotionally distant places. But at the same time, you can feel as a reader identify with many feelings that emerge through those words Ranu expresses in the volume. No? The universal character of her poetry is indisputable. We can identify in her voice the concept of the glocal, representing the global and the local. Thus, India lies at the core of the volume, but the belief in an essential human heart is pervasive. The idea of the planetary that transcends geographical frontiers and cultures is there. No matter the language, English or Spanish, Hindi, whatever language we can think of, what is important goes beyond words. Ranu's poetry reveals India in a kaleidoscopic way, but it also unveils the emotions, maybe worries of the contemporary human being, who these days, more than ever, should consider our belonging to a species coexisting with others, seen and unseen, frontiers and nations aside. And let me finish sharing with you a quote by Anita Desai, which I think really expresses and implies and illustrates Ranu's poetry, no? And the final message that underlies. And it goes like this. It is the movement of the wing one tries to captive, not the bird. That is, it is the image that matters, the symbol, the myth, the feat of associating them, of relating them, of constructing them. Whether one does it in one's native or foreign tongue is not essentially important. It can be done in any language at all, only connect. That is what a writer's experience is all about. It is a process that does indeed apply language, but also transcends. Thank you very much, Ranu, for allowing me to discover the pleasure of translation. And thank you for your poetry, indeed. And we are honored and pleased to have you here with us, sharing this moment, these minutes with us. Thank you very much, Ranu.
Thank you, Carmen. Well, Ranu, now is your turn to speak. Can you tell us something about the origin of this poetry book? What does the day we went strawberry picking in Scarborugh mean to you as a poet?
Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, Antonio. I must thank both of you from the core of my heart for traveling with my poems, because words enable us to travel. Even if we are confined in terms of space and movement, at least we can travel through words, because we are all in love with literature, and that's what binds us and brings us together. And it's really beautiful that this poetry and the way you have translated it and the way you talk about my poetry, I can see what is local has become global, and what is global is now very personal between us. This journey, the day we went strawberry picking in Scarborough, is of course based on varied experiences. Early 1988 to 1992, I was in England for higher studies. I was doing my doctorate at the University of Hull. So that experience, those 4 years were very enriching, you know. And after I returned to India, although I continued to write, but when I came back to India, I was tied up with job, with multiple responsibilities, and not a free lark the way I was in Hull. So, but then this, you know, how memories continue to stay with you. And I think that Scarborough was a very distinct place in my mindscape, because it is a place where the famous writer Anne Bronte was buried. She died in Scarborough and she was buried. So we visited that place, and somewhere, you know, when I call myself a poet, it's not just one is a poet, but I think in every poem I have a story to tell. So this was a story that I wrote of a couple, you know, how they come together and eventually they, you know, they follow their own path, because so this place Scarborough becomes a meeting point. And the act of picking strawberries, which I saw in Scarborough, which would be done, you know, every winter, they would be there picking up, you know, close to winter and autumn, they would be there picking up strawberries. And this was a favorite pastime of many British people in Scarborough. And you go to the open landscape, open field, and you pick up the fruit and you weigh it, and then you pay for whatever, you know, you have picked up. So this was a lovely exercise, and somewhere it stayed with me, and you know, it's a part of that memory which has remained behind. I tried to link it with lives that come together, and then eventually they decide to you know, part. So it's a story of love, and it's a poem that focuses on the theme of love. And along with love comes a state of desperation and urge to understand, and yet when there is inability to understand, you choose a different path. So
okay, thank you, Ranu. Well, this is the obvious question, Ranu. What is poetry for you? Can you tell us something about the process of writing poetry, of writing literature?
Poetry for me is, you know, whatever is left unsaid comes out in a poem. Poetry for me is, you know, when I always feel that when I'm hurt, this is one way of expressing my hurt, that I end up writing poems. Poetry for me is not just a feeling that has stayed. It's like sifting the unnecessary down the drain. You know, it lets you forget and forgive.
Okay, that's a very beautiful definition. Wonderful. I took that down. Okay, and who were and are your biggest literary influences and poetic influences?
Poetic influences. Yes, I'm very fond of Kamala Das, the famous Indian poet who wrote in English. She is the queen, considered to be the queen of erotica in Indian poetry in English. And I'm very fond of Sappho, the Greek poet, and I enjoy the poetry of Rilke. And I'm also fond of Judith Wright. Then one of the poets that I find most fascinating in the current times is Carol Ann Duffy, because yes.
Why?
Well, you know, what I like in her poems is not just the ability to transform what has been created in the mythology. She transforms the women characters like Medusa or Anne Hathaway. She's taken up all those women who were unheard of, who were cast aside, and she gives them a new life. And then the other thing that is there in her poetry is the sense of humor. I like that wit of hers. It's very sharp, it's very pungent, and yet underlying element is that of pathos in some of these poems.
Okay, great.
I like her both for her irreverence in her humor as well as her seriousness of thought.
Well, that's very much like you.
Thank
Indeed.
you.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to quote from Kamala Das precisely. I don't know politics, but I know the names of those in power and can repeat them like days of week or names or months, beginning with Nehru. I am Indian, very brown, born in Malabar. I speak 3 languages, writing 2, dreaming 1. Don't write in English, they said. English is not your mother tongue. Why not leave me alone? Critics, friends, visiting cousins, every one of you. Why not let me speak in any language I like? The language I speak becomes mine, its distortions, its queerness, all mine, mine alone. It is half English, half Indian. Funny perhaps, but it is honest. It is as human as I am human. Don't you see? It voices my joys, my longings, my hopes, and it is useful to me uh, as cawing is to crows or roaring to the lions. It is human speech, the speech of a mind that is here and not there, a mind that sees and hears and is aware. Would you share these words by Kamala Das?
Oh, this is Antonio. This is one of my favorite poems. It's her autobiography in verse.
It's
And
beautiful.
I think in this poem, which she calls an introduction, she just not only speaks for herself, I think she speaks for most of the women who are writing in English, because the very fact that we were colonized for more than 200 years, and then as a woman, especially when she was writing, she chose to write in English. And they said, why write in English? Why not write in your own mother tongue, Malayalam? You know, look at this woman. She's defying the patriarchal structure. She's defying the society by writing in a language which is not hers. But I think she goes beyond the frontiers, beyond boundaries, and she not only talks of the world of women, but she also talks of the world of animals and birds and how important language is. And she talks of the right to choose, you know, the right to choose a language, and any language that I wish to write in, that I'm capable of writing in, I should be allowed to do so. And I think hers is a voice of defiance, which is a very important voice.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Can I break in for a moment, because I'd like to ask you about this, Ranu, the question
Yes.
of English. The question of English. I know you have published a poem that goes around this question, this controversy about using English, the fact that English can be an alien language to actually transmit, no, your inner Indian authentic essence, so to say. Well, how do you feel about this? I read your poem. In fact, I used it in class this year in order to show precisely, that this controversy around English, the fact that you used English as a literary vehicle of expression, is still there, no? So what is your opinion about that? I mean, how do you feel about English?
I think that's the beauty of India, that we are a country with many languages. And here, it is said that there are so many dialects that after every few furlongs, the language would change. And most of us in India are multilingual. So it's not just that I know Hindi and English. We would know a smattering of Bengali or Tamil or Telugu or Sanskrit. You know, people generally pick up languages very fast because it's a country where every state has its own language. So English is important because it is one of the link languages. It is the primary link language, especially amongst the educated classes. But then deep within, we are also conscious of the fact that we have a language of our own.
Right.
And somewhere there is this struggle for survival, for representation. And I think that's what has made me a bilingual poet, because I not only write in Hindustani, which is a blend of Urdu and Hindi, because I belong to the north of India in Lucknow, where there's Urdu as well as Hindi as our link language. So I write in Hindustani as well as in English. And I think that being global, being local, we should be in a position to blend and welcome. English is known for its malleability. It has spread far, and we cannot deny the fact that it is here to stay.
Yeah, well, actually it's there, right?
Yes.
No, and as you are talking, I was going to ask you something, but the idea slipped in my mind. No, but yes, your plans, about your future plans. You're planning, or maybe you've finished already. No, this poetry book in Hindi.
Yes, it has come out. It came out in the month
It
of
has
May.
come out.
Great.
Yes,
Actually,
yes,
okay,
yes. It's there.
okay.
And yeah.
Gorgeous.
And actually in this exercise, in this poetry book, what kind of exercise, if you know, if you want to share beforehand, because we will not be able to read it, are you planning to translate it into English, actually, so that I can translate it into Spanish?
It is a friend, a couple of friends I know, they are trying to translate it into English.
All right.
They will be doing that, and then I will send you the translation. But
Okay.
basically, you know, this collection is a very personal, it's a very intimate collection, because here I write about family a great deal: husband, father, mother, son, you know, my own city, the ethos that is around the city, how people react to situations. I write about the Indian weather. I write about people, I write about women, but of course, it's something very, very intimate things that I write about, the places that that are around me. And I have also written some poems about cities. There are, like, I've written a poem about Goa, then Varanasi, Banaras, which is one of the oldest cities in the country. Then it's like I primarily write about human relationships. And yeah.
But definitely, I think that you are very much interested in human relationships and the effect that you know, places and surroundings have on actually human beings. And if you consider, no, your creative career from the beginning, do you think that you have evolved into, you know, have been transformed as a poet writer? Because this afternoon, we had a conversation. Well, one of the members, Juan Ignacio Libra, had a conversation with Tishani Doshi, and she mentioned at some point that when writers write, they aim to transform the reader, which I agree with. How do you feel as a poet? Do you think that you have been transformed in the exercise as well?
Yes, I think instead of, I would rather put it the other way around, that I'm not here to transform the world, but I see that it's very important for me to transform myself and be a better citizen, a better human being. And
right.
you know, when I change, if I change myself, I'm sure that the surroundings also will get changed, will automatically get influenced. So first, the change has to come from within. And every individual, the change that you know, whatever good we try to do, it might be a drop in the ocean, but it is, of course, being noted somewhere in this universe.
Right. You see, I'm very happy to listen to you saying these things, because one of the feelings that I got when I read your poetry was that I really felt sort of a connection with you, even though we met, you know, that date, and we haven't seen each other since then. I feel that I have known you forever, right? So it was really, really easy for me to translate your poetic expression, because there was some kind of connection there, right, that I could feel and that I can feel, right? So this is as Antonio said, this is my first experience with translation, but I think I'm going to keep on translating you, because I don't think I would find somebody else that I would be able to translate so well, and, you know, with such pleasure. I don't know if this has to do also with the situation, the circumstances, no, the idea of being confined there with the world out there, and, you know, where can I hide, or where can I actually, as I said, no, find the way out, no? And it was your poetry, so you would be here with me forever, right, in my story and my history as a human being, right?
That's very sweet of you, Carmen. I think that is what is the purpose of literature, you know. It's the physical boundaries that merge, and we may not meet, we were very fortunate that we could meet each other, and then we got to know each other, and we read, you read my work and you could relate to it. But then across centuries, we have seen so many writers we've never met, we'll never meet, and yet somewhere it strikes a chord. So writing, I think this is one of the most beautiful gifts that God has given to mankind, and no other species has that gift of words. And that's how we connect and we become one. You know, we might be away, we might be of a different race, different color, different generation, but we have the same hunger, we have the same blood flowing through our veins. We all look for, we are all hungry for love, affection. We hate, you know, violence. We hate people who are disloyal. We hate evil, and we love good. And this is a universal phenomena. And this is the beauty of being human on this earth, that basically we are all one. There has to be a unity in diversity, and which is what poetry is all about.
That is what you are, you in India, actually, no? That's what defines India, no? This unity in diversity. If a culture can teach something, this actually what is illustrated in this idea is there is India, right? I was going to suggest that maybe you could read some poems, and maybe I can read the translation, and then I have a question here that I will leave through the end, right? Okay. But how do you feel about that?
Yes, absolutely fine. You will have to tell me which poem of mine would you like me to read.
Okay, I have selected some here related with different things, right? Let me check, because I have the translation, but not actually. Is the love letter from Lucknow to Bombay? To
yeah, okay.
Love letter. I have the translation in front of mine. Love letter, okay. From a city, Lucknow to Bombay, right?
Yes.
Which is aimed for the artists in exile.
In exile, yeah. Before I begin, I would say one thing, that poetry is meant for the irresponsible, and they have all gone underground.
Another good definition.
Love letter from a city, Lucknow to Mumbai. This poem was written for all artists in exile. There was an Indian painter, M.F. Hussain, who went into exile after receiving death threats in the country because of his because of his paintings, the kind of paintings he had been doing. Now, this is for all artists in exile. Often the words smack of dry dust, ochre robes, patent greed. Often the knife cuts suave silk, slices of melon, a tongue. Often the pen becomes her enemy, unmerciful and crude, a reckless fool. Often the book remains unread, hiding tales, perhaps tomorrow. Often the colors swallow the map, spinning contours, invisible address. Often the song shelters the storm, clutching children after the floods. Often the tears disagree with the night to let loose captive loneliness. Often the answers set a prelude to uneasy questions, shredding wisdom. Often the brush traces a legend, deconstruct death in exile.
Thank you. Now I read the translation. Carta de amor desde una ciudad, Lucknow a Bombay, para todos los artistas en el exilio. A menudo las palabras huelen a polvo seco, a vestimentas ocres, a codicia patente. A menudo el cuchillo corta la suave seda, rajas de melón, una lengua. A menudo la pluma se convierte en su enemiga, despiadada y grosera, una herramienta imprudente. A menudo el libro permanece sin leer, escondiendo relatos, quizás mañana. A menudo los colores engullen el mapa, hilando contornos, direcciones invisibles. A menudo la canción alberga la tormenta, abrazando a los niños después de las inundaciones. A menudo las lágrimas discrepan con la noche para dejar libre a la soledad cautiva. A menudo las respuestas sientan un preludio a preguntas molestas, sabiduría triturada. A menudo el pincel traza una leyenda, deconstruye, muerte en el exilio. Right? It's a beautiful poem, and I'm going to take the chance before we move on to another one, because the question I have in mind, and I've been having in mind this question since yesterday. In fact, I tried to ask this same question to Doshi this afternoon, but now I'm going to ask you. If you note the audience there, there is a recurrent structure, a menudo, a menudo, a menudo. Now, the question is, Antonio yesterday gave a talk on Sri Aurobindo and how Wordsworth influences his poetry, in particular Savitri, and he mentioned at some point, and well, this is something I always share with my students, no? What is actually the act of writing, or how do Indian writers conceive the act of writing, no? And I always tell them that they consider that inspiration is called rasa. That comes, we have our inspirations that come from the muse, no? But rasa comes from the divine, no? It's said. And when a writer aims actually the literary expression and writes, actually gives meaning to those words, and in fact the act of writing becomes a mantra, right? Since the structure here is similar, no, to a mantra, the question is, do you believe that the act of poetry writing in your case is like a mantra?
You know, mantra is a spiritual chant, you know, which has the purpose of a mantra is to connect you to the divine force. And I think that, yes, poetry is certainly words that have been laced together, that have been put together, and it can be a mantra, but depending on, like in this particular poem, there is this constant repetition, there is this note of assertion that I use repeatedly. It is, you know, the use of it brings out the ordinariness of life, and life is ordinary. But what is it that makes it so different? It's so, you know, some act of violence, just as an act of love, act of giving, an act of taking away. You know, they are both two sides of the same coin. Right. With one stroke, you kill a man, and with another stroke, you could just hug him. So what you choose to do as a man is very important, whether you choose to give or you're here to grab. And mantra is the only mantra that I can say that exists as far as we human beings are concerned is only love.
Only love. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you, right? And well, in this same line and related with this idea of repetition, no? Why don't we go to the very end of the volume and take that very last poem you have there, which I really like, no? Surrender, in which you also use this repetitive structure, which you know, it's fantastic because, you know, it closes the volume. It's a claim, actually, a spiritual claim, no? To let me just, you know, search and go and let me be free, no? It's a chant of freedom, actually, spiritual freedom, no?
Yeah.
Can you read for us, please?
Surrender. Let the rivers flow unto me. Let the tides so call of me. Let the streams ruffle my veins. Let the waves push me inside out. Let the waters sink into my soul. Let me drown. Let me disappear. Let me dissolve. Let me go.
Good. Thank you very much. And in Spanish, rendición. Deja que los ríos fluyan hacia mí. Deja que las mareas me empapen toda. Deja que las corrientes alboroten mis venas. Deja que las olas me revuelquen. Deja que las aguas se hundan en mi alma. Deja que me ahogue. Deja que desaparezca. Deja que me disuelva. Déjame ir. Es absolutamente bueno, a mí me llena de emoción. It actually, you know, it goes deep in me, this the meaning of the poem itself, right? I don't know, Antonio, if you want her to read some poem, or you want me to go on directing her into
whatever you like. I don't mind.
No, because I
can read one of my favorites.
Your favorite. Tell her to read in English, and you can read it afterwards.
Yes. Let me see. I can't remember the title in English.
Tell me in Spanish. Maybe I can find it here.
En compañía de mujeres.
In the company of women. In the company of women.
The company of women. Yeah.
Are you ready? This is one of my favorites.
You start, Ranu.
Okay. In the company of women. I'm often asked, why is it that I prefer being in the company of women? Not all, but certain women I prefer. Let this be clear. For years, they have slogged to keep themselves warm and men happy. Warts or boils, corns and aches, they refuse to shudder. Sights and smells travel far, and with them, I have seen my own sadness stumble and dissolve into a mist of hope. I become perky and young, forget my swollen thighs and cauterized uterus. A healthy camaraderie between us flits and warms me inside out. Tucking in the fragrance of jasmine and basil, we become whole and lovely all at once. Between us, slabs of silence rip open prolonged secrets that were ashamed to be rinsed. We lean on each other's arms and often lend a tear or two. We make a pillow of shredded promises and laugh in sleep. No, we do not speak the same dialect, but we do share the calligraphy of the heart. However quiet, however crumbled, we learn to draw from dried up wells, and hence we multiply our joys.
Thank you.
Beautiful. I'm going to read it now. En compañía de mujeres. A menudo me preguntan por qué prefiero estar en compañía de mujeres. No a todas, sino a ciertas mujeres prefiero. Aclaremos esto. Durante años se han esforzado para mantenerse cariñosas y a los hombres felices. Verrugas y forúnculos, callos y dolores, ellas se niegan a estremecerse. Visiones y olores viajan lejos, y con ellos he visto mi propia tristeza tropezarse y dispersarse en la niebla de esperanza. Me vuelvo joven y entusiasta, me olvido de mis muslos hinchados y mi útero cauterizado. Una camaradería saludable entre nosotras revolotea y me abriga desde dentro hacia afuera. Arropando la fragancia del jazmín y la albahaca, volvemos a ser íntegras y encantadoras, todo de una. Entre nosotras, losas de silencio arrancan secretos prolongados, que se avergonzaban de ser aclarados. Nos dejamos caer en los brazos de unas y de otras, y a menudo nos entregamos una lágrima o dos. Preparamos una almohada de promesas hechas jirones y reímos durante el sueño. No hablamos el mismo dialecto, pero sí compartimos la caligrafía del corazón. No importa cuán silenciosas, no importa cuán desmoronadas, aprendemos a sacar agua a partir de pozos secos. Y de ahí multiplicamos nuestras alegrías. La caligrafía del corazón, qué bonito. ¿No?
Yeah, it's beautiful, and it's actually this shows the universal character of the poem, no, with respect to the idea of women, no, and women themselves, no. We know that in India, women have a hard fight to still go for, right? But you know, this idea of gathering together, this so-called sorority, no, that unites us all, no, is there beautifully expressed, no. Women are protagonists in your poetry. Also, the figure of your mother is there, no, which I find absolutely fantastic, no. But I wanted to highlight, because we are almost getting to the time, I think. I wanted to highlight that on the one hand, you have these you have long poems, right? But you can also strike the reader with very brief peels of words, striking peels that you know, make you shake, actually, no. And I want to highlight this letter to Tsunami, which is you know, it's very interesting because you refer to nature, but you highlight the dark side of nature, no? The fact that we are there to feel the elements the way they want us to feel them, right? So we can admire flowers, we can admire nature from a positive perspective, but then there it comes, a tsunami that can hit anytime, no? And you know about this because you suffered it. And there it is expressed very briefly, but very strikingly. Can you read it for us, please?
A letter to Tsunami. No, I had not heard of you. You had not been a part of our geography syllabus. Somehow they missed you. And then when we saw you, we had no time to run for safety. The shadow of death tracked us down.
Right. As quick as that, ¿no? Una carta al tsunami. No, yo nunca había oído nada sobre ti. Tú no habías formado parte de nuestro programa de geografía. De alguna manera se olvidaron de ti. Y después, cuando te vimos, no tuvimos tiempo de correr para protegernos. La sombra de la muerte nos persiguió, ¿no? As hard as that. And then cremation, you know, in 5 lines, you say everything here, no? The actually the terrible, no, situation that widows undergo at some time, and actually in India this is still happening, no? Can you read it for us, please? It's actually a beautiful claim, no, in favor of women, no, and the situation of women in India.
Cremation. You ask me, what is love? Your eyes smell of kerosene. I discard my clothes and get ready for the pyre.
Right. And it goes like this in Spanish. Me preguntas, ¿qué es el amor? Tus ojos huelen a queroseno. Me desprendo de mis ropas y me preparo para la pira. No? It's so striking. It's a force, no, that stems from actually these 5 lines, no? I don't know if you, well, I'm happy because I have had the chance to share with you all these things that, you know, I really experimented myself in confinement, no, having dialogues with your words and trying to get to you through your words. And this this encounter has given me the chance to actually share with you all these things that I had there in my side and lying there, no, waiting to come out. So I thank you very much, Ranu, for this conversation with you, and thank you for being here, and thank you for everything, actually.
I'm indeed very grateful to both you and Antonio. Carmen and Antonio, you have given me another life, a lease of life, because when poetry travels this far, and if it is able to connect, you know, that's the beautiful, most beautiful gift I've ever had as a poet. I must thank you. It has been a very moving experience, the way you've read my poetry and the way you've responded to it. I feel as if it was, it was the inner core of my heart that was speaking through you. You spoke what the way you could relate to poems. I think it was an amazing experience. And this is where the beauty lies, where, of connecting across languages, across barriers. And your reading of poems, both Antonio and Carmen, the way Spanish flows, through your tongue, and the way, so mellifluously you read the poems with such pathos, with such sensitivity and feeling. Despite the fact that I do not know the language, I could flow with your words.
That's the point.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Yeah.
That's
Thank you for making me a part of this program.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And I must also thank the Spanish Association for the Interdisciplinary Study of India for having organized this conference, Roots and Roots. It's indeed, I think it's a very commendable effort, and it's a beautiful effort to bring people together.
Really.
Yeah.
Okay, I think there will be some time for questions or comments or reactions from our audience. Okay, if they want to ask anything, or they have any comment, any reaction, whatever.
Yes, that's important, because we have been actually speaking from the other side, and how do you feel after the reading of poems, from what from your idea of poetry? I don't know, maybe the public the audience can share, whether you feel actually what we have tried to express and to transmit.
Any question? No? Well, Ranu, how would you describe the literary and the poetic panorama in India right now? And more specifically, what are the present conditions of female writing and publishing poetry in India at the moment?
I think this is the best time, but for Indian women poets to come forward, this is one of the best times. And a lot is being written and a lot is being published, and with Facebook and Twitter, we are almost everywhere. But I also feel very strongly that we must learn to separate the chaff from the grain, because poetry is something that every second person, there are more people who are writing poetry than those who are reading it.
That's right.
The same happens here in Spain. And I think
almost everyone is writing it, but then good words survive, good verse survives. And I remember what Emily Dickinson said, tell the truth and you tell it slant.
That's right.
So
definitely. Definitely.
And beauty is truth, truth beauty.
Truth
That's
is beauty.
all you know on earth and all you need to know.
Yeah.
Kids.
And it's good that so much is being published and so much is being done. So it does give women opportunity to see their work in print. But then I call it a sadhana. Sadhana is a Sanskrit word which means tapasya. It's a sort of a meditation which goes on and which stays with you and which sustains you through life. So more than being a public poet, I think it is, as I said earlier, also you interiorize, it connects you with your inner soul. That's how I look at real poetry.
Right. And this, I'm actually reading a question coming from the audience. It says, Carmen, you have talked about the experience of translating and connecting with Ranu's poetry during lockdown. So poetry was in a way therapeutic for you. I wonder if Ranu also considers the act of writing a poem therapeutic. Is poetry therapy? Was it so during lockdown too? Thank you so much. That's the question.
Very good question.
Yeah.
Yes, I think, Antonio, I'm sure that as a poet, you would agree with me that yes, poetry does act as a very fine therapy. Any kind of writing can be therapeutic. Why only poetry? If you're doing nonfiction or if you're doing fiction, it can be therapeutic. And when all else closes, then you open this door and you pick up your pen, because that's the only time when you are with yourself.
Right.
It's the only time. Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
And I remember what William Hazlitt once said, that poetry is all that is worth remembering in life.
That's it.
I agree.
As time goes by, I become totally convinced about that and totally agree. I wish I could sometime write poetry, but still I will keep on translating you. That's yes, I'm planning to do that.
Thank you. That's very heartening to hear.
Yeah.
Because
okay. Any final remark or any other question or comment?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I think then we can finish if nobody has anything to say or to share.
Right. Yeah. So thank you, Ranu. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you all for being there. Do read Ranu Uniyal's poetry, whether in English or in Spanish, or even better in both languages. Thank you very much for being there.
Thank you very much. Thank you for for making me a part of this beautiful project, and for joining me, and for reading me, and for writing about me. Thanks a ton. We have friends for life here.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for everything. Thank you for your voice. Thank you very much, Ranu.
Thank you
for sharing with us this session. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, and that's the end of it, and the beginning.